And welcome to Innovation Day. I'm Sandesh Vetwal, Cloud Support Engineer from AWS, and I'll be your room host today. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of Eora Nation on which land ICC Sydney stands, on which we meet today, and pay my respect to their elders, past and present. Thank you. Some important notes before we get into our session. Please ensure all devices are silenced as a courtesy to your fellow audience member. Should you have any issue with your headset, raise your hand and we'll have someone to assist you. So moving on to this session. So this session is on lesson learned from 100 of migration and modernization journeys to AWS. It's a level 200 session. So in this session, we'll have an Amazonian who has worked at AWS for over 11 years. He will share his lesson learned from 100 of migration he has experienced over the year. In fact, this year alone, his team is targeting to execute over 77 migrations. Please welcome to the stage Evgeny Vaganov, Cloud Solution Center Architecture, leader for Australia and New Zealand. Please give him a big round of applause.
Good morning. So how many of you went out last night for some drinks? Put your hand up, don't be shy. Yeah, a few people. Well, thank you for being here on time, and thank you everyone else who made it here this morning. My name is Evgeny Vaganov. I've been with AWS for 12 years, and today I want to share some of the lessons learned over hundreds of migrations that I've seen executed over those last 12 years or so, and lessons that we've learned along the way from those migrations and modernizations. So let me walk you through what we're going to cover today. First, I want to make sure that we are talking about the same type of migrations, so I'm going to level set on that. We're going to talk about the compelling event, the why of the migrations. Then I'm going to spend majority of the time of the how of the migrations, the frameworks, the tooling, and the tools that we can use to execute migrations. And finally, the next steps. How can you get started yourself? Now, a couple of housekeeping items. This is a level 200 session. I'm not going to go very deep on the tooling and the actual functionality on the things that we have within AWS, but I'm going to cover quite a lot of ground. There's quite a few slides that you might want to take photo of, and there's going to be some QR codes, so get your phones ready. Feel free to take photos and share with your colleagues. Now, thousands and tens of thousands of customers already migrated to AWS, from small companies to some of the household names. But what is a migration? Well, the way that we define migration at AWS is re-envisioning and kind of moving your existing workload or business capability from an external source to AWS. And typically an external source is data center, your office, an MSP that might be running your workloads today, or could be in another cloud. The level of maturity of the cloud in Australia and New Zealand is actually quite high, and we're increasingly seeing many of our customers are interested to migrate workloads to AWS from another cloud. Now, one of the lessons that we learned over many of these migrations is that no matter how big or small the customer is, all the customers want to modernize as they move to the cloud. But what is the modernization? Well, modernization is when you migrate application or workload to the cloud, and as you do that, you adopt cloud-native services, so you can deliver value quickly, frequently, intelligently, and reliably to your customers. And so every customer that we speak to, they want to modernize at least subset of their workloads as they move to the cloud. Some will do that in one step, so as they migrate, they modernize at the same time, and some will do what we call a two-step modernization. They'll migrate workload first, kind of do a lift and shift into AWS, and then they will start modernizing within AWS at their own pace. So let's now talk about where do migrations start. In my experience, they start with a compelling why. And the compelling why could be time-bound. There could be a data center exit coming up, so quite literally data center is shutting down because it's too old. The landlord wants to repurpose the building, the land. There could be end of life for your hardware, and so you either need to spend a lot of money on hardware refresh. There could be a contract renewal coming up for a big chunk of your licensing and they stayed there. So there could be time-bound compelling why. But what we found is that if you just anchor on that time-bound event, there's typically not enough buy-in within your organization to do a full migration and modernization. And so as you start talking to your stakeholders, you actually find out that your stakeholders want to get maybe something different out of migration to the cloud. They don't want to just solve that time-bound compelling event. They might want to transition to a data-driven business. They want to modernize their data capability within the organization. They might want to improve customer experience. They might want to increase velocity of the service delivery. They want to make sure that the business is more green and sustainable. So there's many different compelling whys. And as you seek to kind of rally the support for migration to the cloud, you do need to talk to different stakeholders and understand what could be their compelling why, and be very clear on all the different whys in your organization, and use that to make the case for the change. So while migrations have very defined frameworks and tooling and things like that, there's a bit of art to it. And so let's unpack how migrations work. So we've done hundreds of migrations, and we distill them in 3 simple steps. So the first step is around assessing your existing environment, your existing workloads and applications. And the result of that step is really to building a case for change within the organization. Now, some organizations may have a CFO and CXO leaders who already worked in a company that have adopted the cloud and AWS before, and for them, they might be a little bit more inclined to just go ahead with it with very little supporting information. And so for them, an initial business case, kind of a direction, some understanding around the risk and the timelines and the cost involved will be sufficient. Now, for some of the organizations, they actually need to go into a much more detailed case, and they need to do a full assessment and maybe spend a few months on doing that. And so as you go along this journey, we'll typically suggest to start enabling the organization, upskilling, and doing a lot of things around kind of building some of the foundation. Now, along the way, we suggest to utilize AWS Partner Network. We've got 500 plus partners with modernization and migration competency that will be able to help you to get underway. Now, the next step in the simple 3-step approach is mobilizing your organization. As you satisfy some of the internal stakeholder requirements, sometimes your CFO will ask you for a detailed business case. So they want to know a bit more about the pricing, a bit more about the risks. They want to know the plan, the details, and that's where you could go ahead and start building that out. As you do that, important step is to get your foundations right. So your foundations, your platform, contain of things like landing zone, so your AWS account structure, your network, your connectivity, your security, guardrails and configurations, things like identity federation. So it's important to get it right from the get-go as much as possible. Yes, it will evolve over time, and cloud is obviously built for to support that ability to evolve rapidly. But if you can get some of those things as right as possible from the get-go, it will be a lot easier to migrate and modernize. As you do some of these foundational kind of things, what you find is that you start upskilling your organization and really even driving a cultural change within an organization. Think about today, you might have your infrastructure in on-premises data center. It might be operating based on CapEx, like you buy something, it's a sunk cost, and so you kind of use it, don't use it, it doesn't really matter perhaps. But inside AWS, we want you to optimize your environment as much as possible. We want you to turn it on and turn it off when you're not using it. Yeah? We want you to continuously drive that culture change within your organization, so you're using things efficiently. You're always looking for opportunities to improve your workloads. And so here, really, the result of this mobilized phase is for us to build readiness through different experiences, through building out the platform, the foundation, the landing zones, through upskilling and driving that culture change. And then the final step in this 3-step approach is to actually migrate and modernize applications. This is where you'll start migrating first workload and then doing them in waves. As you migrate them, you obviously start to operate them inside the AWS environment, and you should be making sure that you're optimizing them. Sometimes you go with a very big compute resource, and then you find that actually you don't need such a big resource, so you now have opportunity to optimize it. And then you also modernize your applications. That's where a lot of the additional value is being unlocked. Now, across these 3 steps, we have a variety of tools and services that make your life easier. They all come together under something called AWS Migration Hub. So they support you along the way across all of the steps. But don't forget about AWS Partner Network that can really come in, and they have done migrations themselves multiple times, and they can really help you to accelerate and get it done. Now, on top of that, we also have AWS Marketplace. That's where we have a collection of tools from third parties. So AWS has a massive portfolio of services, but we have even broader ecosystem of partners that will help you to deliver migration type tooling, as well as capabilities to really unlock that value from using the cloud. Now, let me spend a little bit of time on something we call 7 R's of migration. So 7 R's of migration is where we're really looking at the workload, and we're trying to understand what are we going to do as we migrate and modernize to the cloud. And so the first one is very straightforward. We're rehosting, we're kind of going to pick up that workload, move it across, and do very little change to that workload. So let me kind of illustrate what it looks like. You've got on the left-hand side your corporate data center. On the right-hand side, you've got your target AWS environment. You're going to go pick up that workload and move that across. Yes, it's going to have some benefits of being able to rapidly change maybe the sizing of that workload, the grow amount of storage as the data amount increases, or maybe go and optimize it down the track, adopt new types of compute as innovation happens in the cloud. But reality is it kind of looks roughly the same as what it was before. Now, in order to do that, we have Application Migration Service for you. Application Migration Service allows you to pick up, replicate that workload into AWS, test as you do that, and migrate it in a very straightforward process. So let me kind of illustrate what that looks like. First of all, we do have wide platform support. So we can migrate from different hypervisors, from different clouds, from your traditional on-premises infrastructure. We do support multiple operating systems, and we do support a variety of applications that run on top of it. So it's really kind of the great tool, and it can get you going very fast. In terms of how it works, you provision your AWS environment, you build the landing zone, and then inside AWS environment, you set up Application Migration Service. It will require you to install some agents inside your source environment. Those agents will read the source machines and the disks, and they'll do a block level replication into AWS. So they'll read the source, they'll pick up all the changes once the initial replication is done, and continuously replicate that across into AWS. And the cool thing about it, once the initial replication is done, and it's kind of up to date and synced up, you can actually do testing inside AWS. You can have kind of an isolated network environment where you can create a test environment of your workload and have some users come in and do testing around applications to make sure it still works and it works well, to give you confidence that when you do the actual migration and the cutover, that those applications will continue to work. And once you've done the testing, you pick a date, and then you do that cutover. Maybe for a subset of applications, maybe for all of them. I've seen applications and migrations that are done kind of in one weekend. I've seen over 2 consecutive weekends. It really depends on how complex and big your initial environment at this stage. Let me now talk about the next R, relocate. So relocate is where you kind of want to pick up something and do very little change. Maybe it's something like an Oracle database, and we now start offering Oracle database on AWS in partnership with Oracle. You could be running something like Nutanix, a hypervisor inside your on-premises environment, and you can run that hypervisor on top of AWS in a bare metal environment. Really easy to move workloads back and forth. And in some cases, you do need to retain some of the workloads inside your environment. And then we also have things like AWS Outpost, where you can actually extend AWS Cloud inside your environment. So actually have servers and racks of capacity inside your environment that you can manage from the same AWS console. And so if your workload has low latency requirements, or maybe some very specific data residency requirements, so it needs to be maybe Northern Territories, and we don't have the region and infrastructure there, you can actually use that and leverage that for your workloads. And then final one, AWS Local Zone. This is the infrastructure very close to your users. For example, we've got a local zone in Perth where you can have your workloads as well. Now, I'm going to go ahead and move to the next one. One of the tools actually here is AWS Data Sync. So AWS Data Sync is something that you can leverage to copy files from different source environments, like could be on-premises file system, file storage, file share, could be another cloud like object storage in one of the other providers. And you can use that to copy files into AWS. But what's great about Data Sync, it's not only copies files, it can kind of track the changes, so it will copy the deltas, as well as it has ability to copy files from one source within AWS to another destination. So kind of moving from maybe something like object storage into file and vice versa. So really a tool to move lots of information in bulk, in parallel for you. So I'm going to move on to the next R's, retain and retire. And I actually skipped repurchasing because repurchasing is self-explanatory. If you have something like a SaaS application, you've got an existing investment, you're not probably going to go and decommission that. You just repurchase and continue to use that. Retain and retire, also pretty much self-explanatory. Retain, look, you might have something like hardware that you recently refreshed in your data center. You want to continue to sweat that hardware and kind of make the best use of it. It's actually very pragmatic, right? You have something, existing capability, it's fit for purpose, so why not continue to retain that and reuse that? And then when that goes end of life, you can go pick up and move the rest. And some of your application will be end of life. Yeah, end of life applications, that happens all the time. This is where you could go ahead and look at retiring those applications, and maybe even migration to AWS will be a catalyst point where you finally go, you know what, we're going to go ahead and retire that application and make that decision. Okay, as I move along, we now get to re-platform and refactor. These are probably the most labor-intensive parts of the 7 R's framework. So this is where we're really looking at the application. This is typically a high-value application or workload, and we're really looking at how can we modernize it so we can deliver the changes to that application faster, we can improve the usability, we can incorporate additional capabilities into that application. And so the way that we think about replatforming and refactoring is through the modernization pathways, okay? So a typical example, you might have .NET application on Windows. You're looking to leverage .NET Core, so moving it into maybe Linux, so you save on the licensing cost, as well as maybe modernize the way that that application is developed and deployed using a DevOps approach to it. So that's an example, and it will take time to kind of to get that application and move that across to that target state. Another option is called move to AI, right? You hear across the entire conference, AI is everywhere, yeah? So some of your applications will benefit from incorporating AI capability into them. That's also modernization, okay? The other popular pathway is moving to managed databases. So as you move to managed databases, that means that the database that you used to self-manage, maybe doing the patching and all the heavy lifting for the database, you can leverage things like AWS Database Migration Service to pick up that database, replicate that across to the destination, and in fact, it doesn't even have to be the same database engine. Yeah? We can actually do migrations from, for example, SQL Server into Postgres using Database Migration Service, so from one engine to another. Now, Postgres is an open source database engine. That means there's going to be no extra licensing cost, so there's going to be a cost saving, as well as the rich open source ecosystem around Postgres. Now, in fact, open source has been a very big modernization pathway for many of our customers. So our customers quite often modernize by moving from Windows to Linux. Maybe they're moving to containers as well. They're moving to open source database engines. They're moving from proprietary version of Java SDK to Open JDK. So we have a variety of these different options. However, they are labor intensive. They do require quite a bit of extra work compared to just rehosting your applications. And we recognize that at AWS. This is why we're utilizing the power of AI to really help you to get onto that modernization journey. So for example, just 2 weeks ago, we made generally available AWS Transform. AWS Transform uses agentic AI to help you to transform your .NET applications, your mainframes, and transform your VMware workloads into AWS. So let me give you an example of how AWS Transform works with VMware workloads. So AWS Transform has a UI. You go to that UI, and then you really can start and kick off your migration assessment by uploading the export of your VMware inventory. So most of you, if you ever managed VMware, might be familiar with RV tools. So you can give it RV tools kind of export to get going, or you can use it to kick off agent discovery inside your environment, which will require some installation and configuration of agents which will be kind of scanning your VMware workload. Once you do that, the data will be used by the AWS Transform to really create the overview of your environment and start planning the waves of the migration. So from individual workloads to entire collections of the workload, and give you a good view of what that migration would look like. Now, if you're using software-defined data center from VMware and used NSX, so you had firewall rules configured as part of that, it will actually read that configuration and it will create a infrastructure as code templates for you of the identical network configuration inside AWS, including all the firewall rules, including the subnets, including the routing, including the overall network landscape. And finally, AWS Transform can help you to kick off the migration. Now, it might be sounding too good to be true, and it probably is, because this is a tool which could help an engineer who's doing migration to reduce the time from multiple weeks to a few days. Yeah? So it's still a tool that requires an engineer to use it, but it's a time-saving tool. It reduces the amount of labor that we spend as we look into transform and modernize our applications and environments. Now, I talked about different frameworks, I talk about different tools, and there's lots of them, and it could be daunting. Which one do you use? Where do you start? So what we actually do with the customers, we organize something called experience-based acceleration. So we get AWS, the customer, yourselves, and partner, if there is one, into the room, typically for 2, maybe more days, depending on the complexity of the source workloads. And we really get all the executive stakeholder buy-in and all the different team members, application people, network team, security folks, everyone in the same room to really unblock your migration and get things solved over a period of few days. Yeah? Sometimes your migration requires specialist expertise. We will bring those specialists into the room who have the deep knowledge and expertise around, maybe that's databases, maybe that's security, maybe that's networks, and really get things going and unblocking. So please do leverage that. If you ever feel like you got migration that's stalling, like reach out to AWS team. We'll be happy to organize EBA for you. Now, I've seen lots of migrations where people spend months, 6 months, sometimes 12 months, kind of doing detailed business case, analyzing, going back and forth, collecting performance data, and kind of they want to like make it perfect, right? So everything goes really, really well during migration. I've never seen that work. When you actually start the migration, there's always things that you didn't account for. And so rather than spending 6 months, 12 months, like get going and then use that time to solve some of those edge cases and some of those things that you find along the way. Yeah. So don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Like get going. So on the topic of get going and getting started. So how do we get started? So all the things that I talked about, all the frameworks, all the approaches. It's all inside something called Migration Acceleration Program. We combined all the tooling, all the knowledge that we have around migrations, as well as the partners that can come in and be part of your migration journey, as well as the training and certification and kind of the upskilling and cultural changes and experience-based accelerators, all together and wrapped it into Migration Acceleration Program. Now, we know that when you migrate and modernize to AWS, you're going to unlock a lot of value for your organization. Therefore, we're happy to put a co-investment towards that migration, because while you're migrating, there will be cost of your existing environment, and there will be a cost of usage on AWS. So because we are sure of the outcome, we're actually happy to, as part of the MAP program, to co-invest into your migration and help you get going. Yeah? So migrations with MAP actually get done faster, with less risk, and your executive stakeholders are typically much more happier as a result. Now, to get started, AWS is not far away. There's many of us here in this room, in this expo hall. So talk to us, give us a call, use the contact us form. We probably called many of you already in the past. We can help you with the initial kind of directional business case. If you need a detailed one, we'll probably engage the partner to really go and spend lots of time in the office with your personnel and kind of go deep into the environment. And so, but the result of that will be you get all of your stakeholders on the same page, you get your business case, you get a sign-off, and you get started. So let me share one story from last year. Jim's Group is, I think to me, it's a kind of household name. I personally used Jim's antennas to replace an aging antenna on my house before. So Jim's Group migrated and importantly modernized on AWS last year. They used a partner, and a couple of things they've done are very interesting. They kind of had this mobile app for their franchisees. They've done a route optimization to save time as a franchisee kind of goes around different jobs. Yeah, so time saving and obviously productivity improvement for them. But also they innovated by incorporating ability to pass opportunities from one franchisee to another in the same area. So as one franchisee comes in to understand what is your requirement, what is your need, maybe another task will come up, maybe they're replacing antenna, but maybe some electrical work needs to be done. Now Jim's Group can seamlessly pass those inquiries and those opportunities within their franchisee network. So awesome result for Jim's Group, and they're a very happy customer. Now, for some of you, you might have done AWS migration before, you might have hired someone on your staff who used AWS environment before, and you kind of just want to get going. You don't really need the business case, CFO signed off. They're like, hey, when can we get going? We have something called AWS Lift. This is for new AWS users. You can actually go ahead and sign up yourself. It will unlock $83,500 in promotional credits, and they really get unlocked at stages as you migrate and use AWS services. So you don't actually need to talk to pretty much anyone to get that going. You don't need to involve a partner. If you've got that internal capability, you've hired someone with AWS expertise, you could utilize Lift. Now, sometimes migration is not a good start. You don't have the compelling time-bound event. There's not enough support within the organization, and this is where you're really looking to maybe do something innovative. Yeah. So today is Innovation Day. We have lots of different talks across the pavilions, and so a couple to highlight. There's going to be a talk in stage 3 around Amazon Connect, our telephony and contact center service, around how to improve the customer experience utilizing AI. There's one around Amazon Q for Business. This is the internal chatbot that can tap into your existing knowledge bases, your wikis, your documents, your PDFs, things like that, and gives that agent kind of chat experience to you and to increase your employee productivity. And then we have lots of our customers actually presenting during lightning talks about the things that they have done using modernized data and AI. With that, I'd like to thank you very much for being here and sticking out with me. Feel free to connect with myself on LinkedIn. Send me a note if you'd like to talk about your migration and modernization and explore what and how you can do it next. With that, thank you very much. Please complete the feedback form in the mobile app and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.